This is Channel Attitude. Your voice. Your right. Your freedom.
Vito, how's it going?
Everything is going good. Thank you for filling in today. Noel is on the disabled list. Oh, yeah.
It happens to even the best professional athletes.
You know what it is? She overworks herself here at the Big Vito Mafia, you know what I'm saying? And, with all the great things she does, Brad, you know what I mean? She works herself to the bone. She's got a little walker. She's going here, going there, carrying her computer, trying to cook and clean and scrub and, keep the mansion in place. You know what I'm saying? Keep my kingdom running smooth. That's what I like about her.
She's the backbone of the Big Vito brand.
The backbone of the Big She is the Macho Man to my Hogan. I just don't know how else to say it. I mean, she's the ultimate. Hopefully we get her back on next week so we can have another Mr. versus Mrs. Hey, Brad, did you hear about what happened during the vote this week?
I heard that this is the conspiracy is that sold
now,
the
guys,
Carolina Reaper jerky.
How can you sell the hottest beef jerky there is in that's living? If it's hot, you're going to choke. So how the hell, with me not choking and not even taking a sip of water during the whole segment, how am I like flaking out on this?
I don't know, Vito. I know this. I like flavorful, spicy things, but I have no tolerance for it at all. So I do the mild sauce. When I put taco sauce in something, it is mild. So just watching you do that is painful for me. I don't have that hot tolerance. I know Noel thought that sold it. I didn't think sold it. I think you just have a tremendous tolerance for hot stuff. My dad does too, and I don't have that. But you clearly do. To eat the entire bag, you didn't just have one. I want to point that out. Yeah, you could maybe sell one, but when you're eating the entire bag, yeah, you can't sell that. Yeah.
You are the real deal. Guys, we went to Chrissy Rivera's wedding and they had a hot sauce challenge. All these guys, oh my God, Big Vito's here. He's going to taste our hot sauce. Can you believe it, brother? I ate everything. I was dipping the whole chicken wing in, going like this. Is that all you got? You fucking jobbers.
Now, can you do sour stuff like you do the hot stuff?
Sour in what way?
Sour, maybe something like a sour candy, Sour Patch Kids, sour lemon, maybe crybaby gum. The real sour stuff.
I could do it. Without spitting it out or I could do it. I have a big. You know what? I'll tell you guys something. I'm on such a diet. I'm so regimented, and just so everybody knows, I finally did take a week off from the gym. Just so everybody, I did take a week off. Today was my first day back at the gym. I've been training secretly for something. And I said I had enough of everything. Life just caught up to me. I said, you know what? I had enough. You know what I mean? I said, no gym, no ball, no nothing. I spent time with my wife. She was laid up a little bit, but I was home. You know what I mean? I was home. And I didn't go to the gym. I went back to the gym today. And I stretched my body out. I did an hour of cardio. I worked out like a champ. I did my sweat thing. And during this little bit of vacation, I still kept to my diet. I didn't go overboard. I ate the jerky, but like when you're home and you say, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to eat that. I could tell you, I could eat a whole pizza pie, New York style pizza pie with no problem. Wow. I have an appetite where I can eat 7 pieces of prime rib with no problem. I have that big of a belly where I can eat But I keep myself on such a light diet. It's pathetic. If you seen me eat, you'd be like, "How the hell are you surviving?"
By the way, those New York pizza pies can be really big. I
No,
just
they
want to
can.
point that out. When you say you can eat an entire pizza pie, New York style,
Yeah.
those are some big damn slices.
No, but they're good. They're cheesy. There's nice sauce on them. Like even like just to say even a Papa John's or a Little Caesars, vegetable pie with extra everything on it, right? I could eat that with no problem.
Wow.
The whole thing. And like people look at me and say, then like they said, well, if you can eat, how come you don't eat like that all the time? When I was bigger and I was eating for size, my brother and father used to bring me home spinach pies for dinners. A whole spinach pie, make spinach like Italian style, right? I used to eat the whole thing. There was nothing. There was pancakes in the morning, pancakes in the afternoon, pancakes at night. It was just putting on the beef like it was supposed to back in the old days. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, how big were you, Vito? What was your max weight during WCW, WWE? Because you were pretty big.
Well, in the beginning, talking 250, 260, right? I went up to 290 in Puerto Rico, came back down to 260 to go to All Japan. During my ECW run, I was like 250, 260. WCW, I think I was like 270.
Okay.
But I was a big, stout 270 that I could move. And then when I wanted to go to the WWE, I had to be pretty boy cut up and get down under 215. Right now, I'd say I'm about 215, 210 right now. I haven't gone on a scale, but I could tell from my clothes, I could fit in all my dress clothes from the WWE when I was at my thinnest.
You're in tremendous shape. There's no question.
I try. But Brad, we have something to discuss and we have a debate live, baby, live here on Mr. versus Mrs. with Brad Shepard filling in with Noel. And this is going to be something fun. Who is the greatest booker of our generation? Brad, I'm going to give it to you.
For me, I am a Vince Russo guy, and I'm unashamed of that. For me, Vince Russo understands not just the wrestling element, but he really specializes in the TV element, producing a TV show, writing a TV show, understanding how that works and understanding how to lure in people that aren't that traditional hardcore wrestling audience that is going to watch every week. Vince was always thinking the big picture. How do I draw in the new audience, the people flipping the channel, drinking a beer? Oh, what is this story? The stories and characters drawing them into the show.
Okay, that's your pick, Vince Russo. Now, how far would you say your wrestling goes from when you were watching?
I remember
40
watching.
Years? 40 years?
I'm 42, about to be 43. So I remember watching when I was 7 for sure in 1985.
Okay.
I've watched a lot of older stuff as I got older, through technology, but I definitely remember watching the first WrestleMania. So I've been watching for quite a while.
All right. Now, I'm going to go through the bookers since I actually watched and I actually worked for. Then I will pick my choice. Okay.
Yeah.
This gives us a little educational thing here on Mr. versus Mrs. All right. We start out with me watching WOR, the WWF, right? On at 12 o'clock at night on Channel 9. So that was Vince Sr.
Yep.
We move over to Vince Jr., Vince McMahon. Okay, that was the realm where the basis where, oh my God, this is the only wrestling you're ever able to watch.
Yep.
I get into wrestling. I learn there's other places where WWF is not the only place. You talk about, no, this is true, guys. This is not being stupid. This is being uneducated, because when you're a New Yorker, you only know WWF.
Yeah, those territory days. Yeah.
So you didn't know about Portland. You didn't know about Canada. Now here I am getting into the wrestling business, and all of a sudden I know Japan. So you say Japanese wrestling. I'll say Inoki, Baba, Inoki and Baba, because all Japan New Japan. Then you go to Puerto Rico. You have Carlos Colon. You have Savio Vega. You have Victor Quinones. Okay. Go to Santo Domingo with Jack Veneno. You have all the little independents, but you really can't say everything is they're bookers, but they're in little independent run companies. So they're not at the big realm. Okay. So you can't really count them, even though there were some great people who ran great companies back then. Not insulting nobody. You go to ECW with Paul Heyman, right? No, I'm sorry. I went ahead of myself. You go to Memphis with Jerry Lawler.
Tremendous territory, by the way.
Jerry Lawler. And then you go on the other side where there was Jim Cornette. Right?
Yep.
So you got a bunch here so far. Then you go to ECW with Paul Heyman, Eddie Gilbert, because Eddie Gilbert was in charge first, then Paul Heyman. You go to WCW, okay? Kevin Sullivan, Terry Taylor, Eric Bischoff, Jim Ross in the realm somewhere, okay? Vince Russo was there. They had, let's stick with that, because then it just got messy after that. You get out of that, you go to XWF. Now, Hogan, Jimmy Hart, that was their baby, right?
Yep.
So after that, you go to the WWF, WWE, and there's Vince McMahon again. Plus there's Impact, where you had Jeff Jarrett, Dutch Mantel, Terry Taylor. Okay? Out of those guys, working for those guys, who is the best guy and most creative guy you say I work for? When you look at it, Memphis wrestling I love, because, oh my God, it's like, it's like the things you never knew, but it was the place that you learned. Carlos Colon and Invader and Ricky Santana ran WWC. Whole different fan base where the people believed, right?
Yep.
Japanese wrestling, Inoki Baba, you had to be a wrestler, and there was no storylines. You had to know how to wrestle.
Well, that's covered as a shoot there. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Jim Cornette, which is probably one of the best wrestling minds. Like I always say, his wrestling mind is cool. His presentation might be a little rough for people, but his mind of the wrestling game of what it should be is on point.
I agree. Yep.
Okay. You get to WCW, you have Kevin Sullivan, who I respect the hell out of. And my boy. Eric Bischoff, another great mind. You have Terry Taylor, who doesn't get enough credit for being a mind in the business. And at the time, Terry Taylor was working for the WWF, then went to WCW to work for the WCW in the office, then went back to the WWE. And I used to say, Terry, I said, you got the greatest mind in the business. So out of all that, you say, who's the most creative? You look at Paul Heyman. Okay. He took ECW, made stars, had a cult following. Now, Brad, I'm going to ask you, would that have been something that would have stuck if there was funding?
It's very possible, Vito. I mean, I think ECW was such a major influence on the business. They got the deal with TNN, so they really started to grow.
Mhm.
Paul Heyman really understood his audience well in ECW.
Right.
He knew what they wanted and he delivered it. Yeah, the funding, obviously the issue, but that was really where you started to see this hardcore wrestling audience start to do this sort of rebellious thing. We've talked about it before, of course, on Everything is a Gimmick on the Big V
Mhm.
Mafia Patreon, but it's definitely something that we see transitioning into AEW today. That sort of cult sort of audience. We saw that in ECW, and
Right.
I absolutely believe they would be around today if not for the funding.
Now, if he was allowed, and this is, I don't know if everybody's privy to this, right? But when there were offers coming to ECW talent, Taz was first. The Dudley Boys was second. I was third.
Mm-hmm.
Taz went to WWE.
Yep.
The Dudley Boys went to WWE. I went to WCW.
Yeah.
If you were able to keep those guys under contract, Shane Douglas, Taz,
Yep.
Mike Awesome, Lance Storm, Raven, all those major players. You're talking New Jack, Axel, Balls, Danny Doring, Roadkill, Chetty, Nova, the list goes on.
Yeah.
That was a stable of guys.
But those are tremendous talents, Vito. Like,
The
if you,
matches.
yeah, I mean, it was just the Dudley Boys to me, one of the absolute greatest tag teams of all time. And so you've got that. You had a tremendous career. Obviously, Taz had a great career. Shane Douglas, great talent. There were so many talents in ECW that's why I say, like, if they had the funding and they had a larger platform, man, I mean, those talents shined, and they did in other companies as well, too. Great roster.
Now you talk about all the guys who wrestled on that roster who became champions in other companies.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at that, guys. Take a look and analyze that for a minute. If you're wrestling for ECW and you're under Paul Heyman's tutelage, now everybody can say what they want about him, but I'm talking strictly wrestling mind.
Right.
My pick would be Paul Heyman.
Very interesting. I mean, it's a great pick. I'm not going to say it sucks because it obviously doesn't. You gave the people what they wanted, and no question about it.
Now, you talk about Memphis wrestling, right? And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, the old adage is you can't book and you can't wrestle, because when you book for yourself and the rest of the. Now, no disrespect to anything, because this is just the way wrestling was done back then. Jerry Lawler, the king of Memphis.
Yeah.
You went through Memphis to get to the WWE. Nobody beat Jerry Lawler in Memphis.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. By the way, tremendous feud with Bill Dundee there in Memphis, just in all-time great territory. But you're right. I mean, you look at Dusty Rhodes when he had the book. The criticism on Dusty is that, he was booking himself to win past his prime. So you run into that dilemma of, I've got the book, I'm also wrestling, and I'm tempted, obviously, to put myself over.
I helped a gentleman in Florida. His name was Sonny Blaze. Many people don't remember him. He was a friend of mine. He wanted to run a promotion in Tampa. So he says, Vito, will you help me run it? And he says, I want you to book for me. I said, okay. Now, I was the only WWE guy on the card, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a bunch of Florida wrestlers that were in the territory because they were homegrown talent that never really went out and shot out, right? So we booked these guys, we booked matches. At the end of the night, here I am in the main event, right? I'm wrestling. I get my ass kicked. Right? I'm left laying every show. No matter what, I got my ass kicked. If you look at the matches and people used to get mad and they'd say Vito's booking himself, Vito's doing this and doing that. They didn't understand the psychology. I am taking a beating from not one, but 4 and 5 guys and taking 6 and 7 big moves to get them over. So when I'm laying in the ring, I'll never forget this. I got the shit beat out of me by 6 guys in a mask. Okay? And I told them, okay, we're going to do this. I want you 3 to do this, you 3 to do this, you 3 to do this. They did it. They did an excellent job at listening. The show's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I still laid in the middle of the ring. Right?
Yeah.
This is an indie show. Guy's wife goes, hey, Al, Vito's still in the ring. Is he all right? People stayed because I laid in the ring.
You sold. Imagine that.
I didn't move.
Yeah.
Finally, I got up and they were putting chairs. When I tell you they were actually packing the chairs, they were packing chairs. And I finally rose up and I did this. And I had the dress was like, I put it back on and I'm going back to the dressing room and people will come in and say, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. I just, took a little bit too much tonight. That was the art I tried to get over with these guys so bad. And they used to get mad until later, 5 years later. Vito, I didn't get it then, but I get it now. And I appreciate what you're doing. But do you know why I did this? Because I learned from those guys, every single one of them. If the baby face doesn't sell, you don't have a product.
Right. Got to build that sympathy. Yeah. That was tremendous because what you're doing by laying there, Vito, is you're transitioning from the fan perspective of, okay, this is a work to, wait a minute, is this a work? Because it's 20 minutes and he's laying there in the ring. Is something wrong with Vito? And you're emotionally drawing them in through that. Just tremendous.
Now, Vince Russo's booking, okay? What would you say was the most prolific thing he did in WCW?
Well, obviously, David Arquette winning the world title was a big thing. Vince winning the title. What I liked about Vince Russo's booking is there was a lot of unpredictability. Okay. It was written like a TV show, right? I mean, to me, it was watching wrestling was cool when Vince was the head booker in WWE. I was in college and we would watch Monday Night Raw and WCW Monday Nitro in the common space of the dorm that I was in college. It was a cool thing. We would wear wrestling t-shirts and you're not going to see that today. There's no Johnny Gargano t-shirts going into the mall. So it was something he presented that was mainstream and cool. It connected with modern society, telling your boss to go F himself. That kind of thing he built up, that anti-authority. You had Vince, of course, the foil. You had Stone Cold. But he really understood how to write TV. There needed to be a hook. There needed to be a big reveal, a main event segment. It's something to hook the fans into watching throughout the entire episode, right? So from start to finish, and then also the next week. What was the storyline going into next week where you had to see this? And that's no different than, someone watching a soap opera. Something happens in a soap opera. You have to wait till next week to see, what was going to happen with these characters. You would see that on regular TV. And that's something that I think sometimes people in the wrestling bubble lose sight of.
Now, I want to ask you, did you buy Ric Flair against David Flair when Vince says the bad guy?
You can buy a lot of things in the right perspective. You have to be able to write the story correctly and you have to produce the match correctly.
Did you believe in the angle?
I did believe in the angle. I mean, I
Okay.
to me, you can make certain things work. Now, in a real life situation, it was like, yes, you can say, hey, it would be more difficult to believe, like, David Flair, but at the end of the day, there's a family element. So you've got the characters and you've got the stories, right? And you can add that
Okay.
unpredictable element to make up for the fact that, David Flair was obviously a disaster in the ring. But it was a family deal. So it worked. And again, it's just I think to me it was something relatable to people. When you have a family dispute or disagreement, or people could say, hey, I hate my uncle, I hate my aunt, I hate my whatever. So they've been through that and they can relate to it. The average person, not just the wrestling fan.
Okay. Now, why were Kevin Nash, Roddy Piper, Ric Flair promos so good?
I first of all think they were good because it was them. They were able to have great characters, turned up to 10 themselves, right? They weren't necessarily produced. It's not like today where they were scripted per se. I mean, they knew generally, here's the story, the angle, here's what we're advancing. So they knew that. But they weren't getting a piece of paper saying, here is 500 words. You're going to need to memorize that and then repeat it on a microphone in front of an audience. So they had that element. They were believable because they understood psychology. They know how to work in the ring, and they knew their characters, and they stayed true to that.
Now, when you saw Vince Russo shoot on Hogan, now I told you, and everybody knows, I was sharing a locker room with Hogan that night. It was just me and him in the room. And here's my buddy out there, Vince Russo, cutting the promo of a lifetime.
Awkward.
I'm not going to say it was awkward. I'm just going to say surprised. Like, because, like, to everybody out there who's listening, I don't care what you say. If you're a wrestling fan, Hulk Hogan was a god at one time in your life.
Absolutely.
And here I am sharing a locker room with God. But then my best buddy is out there cutting a promo on God. And you're like, fuck. Vince is mad. Hogan's in shock. What do you do? Oh my God. Is there going to be a fight? I got to fucking fight Hogan. I got to stick up for Vince. Hogan's my friend. I don't want to fuck shit up. It's like, okay, what do you do? It's a parting of the
You're in
Red
the middle.
Sea. You're in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So when I went to Vince and I had this look, Vin, what the fuck happened? What'd you do? He gave me the spiel. I will not repeat what he said.
Yeah, of course.
But he was passionate about what he wanted to do with Jarrett and Booker T. And I think when you talk about Nash and Flair and Roddy Piper and so many others who cut some great promos, you think about, okay, freedom of speech. Vince gave them a layout. They went and did it because they were professionals. Now, the greatest promo I ever heard, and something that stuck with me in my career, was Kevin Nash talking about the wrestling business when he said, you can't let the bookers and the owners and everybody take advantage of you. You got to stick up for yourself. That stuck with me till today. That is the reason I stick up for myself in the wrestling business. That is the reason why I am the way I am, because I took that for heart. And I says, he is 100% right, except he had the balls to come out on national TV and say it and stick up for the boys.
Which was a good thing, by the way, because, I would like to see, just as a fan, more wrestlers take it as a business. And, maybe in some regards, all wrestlers are fans of the business or grew up at some point liking it. But it's a business. It's how you earn your living. So you should treat it like that so that you get what you're owed, right? What you earn. Whether that be time off, whether that be money, whatever the compensation may be, you have earned that. You've built a brand and you should capitalize on that and not be ashamed of that.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, the reason why it was successful for Vince Russo in WCW, he had Mean Gene, he had Bobby the Brain,
Mm.
he had Madden, he had Sabisco. Am I missing somebody? Tony Schiavone,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If I'm missing somebody, please don't get angry. I'm just going right up top of my head. And then on the other side with Paul Heyman, you had Paul Heyman and you had Joey Styles.
Yeah.
And Joey Styles was he was in the office. He knew the product. Now, if you were to ask me who is the greatest announcer of all time, Vince McMahon, hands down, because it was his brand, his product. He knew exactly what to promote, what to push, how to push it.
Yeah, Vince was an outstanding announcer, commentator. No question about it.
So when you talk about having the people in place and having the people push the right buttons, you're going to have a successful thing. Now, when Vince was in WWE, who were the announcers? Do you remember?
Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler.
Right. That was the two.
Yep. And they were tremendous.
Let's go with Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. Now, like I said, Jim Ross was considered a god. Jerry Lawler is Jerry the King Lawler. He was a wrestling. When the both of them got together, they talked some good wrestling 101 psychology.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about other guys who knew how to be wrestling announcers, Paul Heyman was a wrestling announcer in the early WCW days, Paulie Dangerously.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Cornette, I believe, was a wrestling announcer, I think, for the WWE or the NWA.
Yep, he's actually done both. Yeah, he was in the modern NWA briefly. But yeah, another guy who's tremendous on the mic.
Right. And you talk about, like I said, when it came to talking wrestling and knowing the product and what it was, those are the guys you want in the pocket. Those are the guys you need.
Yeah.
Vince Russo, he's my buddy. I love him to death. I'm not saying he's not the worst. If I had to work for him, I'd work for him 10 times. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But being that you picked Vince Russo, that's your pick. My pick would be Paul Heyman. More dynamic, more charismatic. What was the greatest thing about Paul Heyman? He can get you to do it because he motivated you. I think when Vince Russo asked you to do something, Vince, he's a kind soul. He did things, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Wasn't the motivating son of a bitch that Paul Heyman was, because he was crazy for ECW. He would sit in the rafters, he'd be with the crowd, walk out with the ponytail, the leather jacket. You know what I mean?
He had the big cell phone at one point.
Yeah. So you talk about, different things that you like. Just Vince had a different approach than Paul Heyman, but both were successful.
But I will say this, both were successful, but only one was the WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
Did you really say that? Oh my God.
I had to get that in. I was holding that one in.
Hey guys, hey, you know what? It is what it is. I mean, did Vince McMahon ever hold the WWF title?
He did, yeah.
He did, right? Carlos Colon held his. Jerry Lawler held his. Paul Heyman was not a wrestler, but I think he managed. Who did he manage in ECW? Rob Van Dam? Taz?
Yeah. I mean, he managed very successful wrestlers too.
Right. Yeah. So you talk about when you talk about stuff like that, guys, those guys were along with championships. Jerry Lawler, Carlos Colon. It just goes to show you that wrestling history is successful when you talk about the great minds and all the people that we mentioned today. You notice there's no outside agenda. We're talking wrestling and we're talking from the heart. We're talking what made wrestling great. And these individuals, no matter what time, what place, Eric Bischoff might not be the greatest mind in the world, but he had a great run.
Tremendous.
So with that run, you put him in the mix because he helped revolutionized wrestling.
NWO.
Eric Bischoff, no matter what you got to say on the outside, his beefs, what he did after, he will never get to that success level that he had with the NWO in those 3-4 years with WCW. But for those 3-4 years, he was the man. He was bigger than Vince McMahon.
It was magical.
No way you can't shape it. If Paul Heyman would have had funding and he was able to ink and contract and pay everybody comparable money to what everybody left for, ECW might have been around another 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and some of those guys in ECW, by the way, were ahead of their time. They were just like the Dudley Boys. They were tremendous. Ahead of their time with what they were doing.
For sure. All right, guys, you got the vote. I hope you enjoyed this Mr. versus Mrs. This has been a very pleasant and interesting talk. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Guys, you have 5 days to vote. You can vote for Brad Shepard subbing for Noel Harlow, or you can vote for Vito LaGrasso, the Skullster. All right. My pick was Paul Heyman. My man here went for my buddy Vince Russo. Guys, you got 5 days. Brad, close the show. Take it away.
No pressure. If you don't want to vote for me, that's okay. I won't take it personal. Even though I think I'm right, I think Vito's got a great pick. Thanks for tuning in, guys. You can always check us out on the Big V Mafia Patreon. For as low as $1 a month, you can get a ton of content. It's patreon.com/Big V Mafia. It's part of the Big Vito brand, thebigvitobrand.com. Make sure to follow Vito and myself on Twitter. I'm at It's Brad Shepard. Vito's at the Big Vito brand. Thanks for your support, and maybe you'll see a prettier face in my position next week.
Peace out, guys.